ॐ विश्वन्दर्पण दृश्यमान नगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतम् पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यदीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्री परमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ तपोभिः क्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणां मुमुक्षूणामपेक्ष्योऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते. I welcome you all to the 8th class of the Atma Bodha series. We will read verses 10 and 11 that we completed in the last class. यथाकाशो हृषीकेशः
यथाकाशो ऋषिकेशः
नानोपाधिगतो विभुः
नानोपाधिगतो विभुः
तद्भेदात् भिन्नवत् भाति
तद्भेदात् भिन्नवत् भाति
तन्नाशे केवलो भवेत्
तन्नाशे केवलो भवेत्
नानोपाधिवशादेव
नानोपाधिवशात् एव
जातिवर्णाश्रमादयः
जातिवर्णाश्रमादयः
आत्मन्यारोपितास्तो ये
आत्मन्यारोपितास्तो ये
रसवर्णादिभेदवत्
रसवर्णादिभेदवत्.
Before the world came into being, Brahman alone was there. And Brahman is the all-pervading, eternal, changeless consciousness. Then how did this world come about? If Brahman is changeless, then how did this diversity of things and beings come about? So for that, we bring in a second factor, which is not really a second factor, called Maya. It cannot be counted separately because Maya is dependent upon Brahman for its existence. Then what is Maya as we saw, Maya is the entire world in an unmanifest form. Just like the entire tree is unmanifest in the seed, the entire movie that is about to emerge is unmanifest in the DVD, or the entire dream world that is about to emerge is unmanifest in the waker's mind. So also the entire world that is about to emerge is unmanifest in Maya. So Brahman is changeless. It just provides the existence and consciousness. And Maya provides all the Namarupas, names and forms. Brahman is the changeless material cause, Vivarta Upadana Kāraṇam. Maya is the changing material cause which evolves into this world. It changes and evolves into this world. Now, Maya has got two powers. Shakti Dvayam hi Mayayaha, it's said. So Maya has these two powers, Vikshepa Shakti and Avarana Shakti. The power to project and the power to conceal. So exactly like in our dream, because of the pressure of vasanas, the dream world arises, the dream world is projected by the Nidra Shakti, the waker who has gone to sleep. The sleeping waker projects the dream with the Nidra Shakti. Similarly, Brahman with Maya projects this world with the Maya Shakti, with the Vikshepa Shakti of Maya. So what happens with the Vikshepa Shakti of Maya? Why does it get triggered? Because of the pressure of the fructifying karmas of all the jivas, the samashti prarabdha, all the jivas put together. So as the shloka said, verses 9, 8 and 9, they talked about the emergence of the worlds and the emergence of the beings. Jaganti sarga srishti layanyanti budbudani iva varini. So these worlds emerge, not just worlds emerge from Brahman in association with Maya because of the Vikshepa Shakti of Maya. And they emerge like bubbles emerge in an ocean. So the point being made is that the bubbles don't have any separate existence from the ocean. The bubbles are just namarupas of water, which makes up the ocean. So similarly, these worlds don't have a separate existence other than Brahman. And so also, sarvaha vividhaha vyaktayaha prakalpitaha. All these beings emerge from Brahman in association with Maya because of the Vikshepa Shakti of Maya. So all of us are here because of the Vikshepa Shakti of Maya. When I say all of us, I mean these bodies and minds. Then, once this Vikshepa Shakti has produced these worlds and beings, then as we said, project and enter. In the dream, we project and enter the dream. The waker enters the dream in the form of the dream individual. Similarly, Brahman gets enclosed in these bodies and minds as though consciousness, that one all-pervading consciousness, gets enclosed in quotes within these bodies and minds. So it has entered these bodies and minds. So far, the Vikshepa Shakti of Maya has been at work. And now what happens? Project, enter, forget. The Avarana Shakti of Maya comes in. Now these beings, this being, this Jiva who is in this body and the mind, he forgets his real nature, that I am really Brahman. Therefore, he takes himself to be really enclosed in this body and mind and sees others also as enclosed consciousnesses. So starts talking about a plurality of consciousnesses everywhere. So this is what is indicated by Bhagavad in verse number 10. He gives the example of Akashaha, which we saw in the last class. Yatha Akashaha, Yatha Akashaha Vibhu. Akasha is all pervading. Nanopadhigataha, but it gets associated with these various enclosures. We took the example of various pots. So now we say that space has been enclosed by these pots. We talk about a multiplicity of spaces. And we say this space is big, this space is small. We talk about forms of spaces. And this is the living room, this is the dining room. We talked about the names of spaces. The space, which is one and all pervading, becomes multiple and associated with names and forms. Why? Tad bhedat bhinnavad bhati. Space has not really been altered. It appears to be multiple with varied names and forms because of the enclosures, the difference in the enclosures. Like we saw, we take the pot, outside there is unoccupied space. Where the walls of the pot are, there is occupied space. And inside the pot, there is unoccupied space. So the continuity of space has not been disturbed by the pot at all. The space is not in the pot is in the space. So we talk about all these multiplicity of spaces if we don't understand the real nature of space. Then pot becomes a visheshanam, like we saw. Visheshanam is a differentiator that enters into the thing being differentiated. That really alters the thing being differentiated. Like the blue pot is different. I know it's different from the red pot and the black pot. Why? Because it's blue and the blueness has altered the pot. But when we talk about the pot space, the pot is a differentiator that allows me to talk about this pot space without really having altered the space in any way. So pot is not really a visheshanam, but the pot is an upadhi. That's the difference between a visheshanam and an upadhi. But when I don't understand the nature of space, that space cannot really be enclosed at all. Then I mistake the pot that is really an upadhi to be a visheshanam. So that's how I talk about a plurality of spaces. Annashe kevalo bhavet. But if these pots are destroyed, then I see that space is one. But like we saw, this is not a literal destruction of the pots that we are talking about. We don't have to literally destroy the pots to see that space is one. Ghate visheshana buddhinashaha is what is required. Ghate visheshanatva buddhinashaha. In the pot, the visheshanatva buddhi that I have, that this is a visheshanam, that has to be destroyed. Then the pot becomes an upadhi, and then I see that space has not really been altered at all, even in the presence of all these pots. So whether these pots come or pots go, space is not affected at all. Kevalaha bhavet. It always remains one and undivided. So similarly, tatha Hrishikeshaha, so also Hrishikeshaha, Hrishikanam Ishaha, the Lord of the senses, meaning this all-pervading consciousness, Brahman. Nanopadhigata, Nanopadhigataha, because it gets enclosed in quotes in all these enclosures, which are these bodies and minds. Tadbhedat bhinnavad bhati, we start talking about a plurality of consciousnesses. We say this whale is conscious, as a whale possessed its own enclosed consciousness. This ant is conscious, this lizard is conscious. And then we talk about consciousness being associated with all these different names and forms. But all of these differences are due to the differences in the enclosures, not because there are differences in consciousness. It is still one undivided, non-dual consciousness. Tad bhedat bhinnavat bhati. Annashe kevalo bhavet. If all these upadhis are destroyed, I will understand that consciousness is one. But here again, we are not talking about literal destruction of the upadhis. We are talking about upadhau satyatva buddhinashaha. The satyatva buddhi that I have in the upadhi, that has to be destroyed. Meaning, I am taking these upadhis to be real. But really speaking, all the upadhis are just nama rupa. They don't have their own independent existence. And I will continue to take the upadhis to be real as long as I don't understand the real nature of the Atma. Atma is Satya. Brahman is Satya. Exactly as I continue to take the parts to be Visheshanam, as long as I don't understand the real nature of space, that it cannot be divided. It's indivisible. So as long as Atma Jnanam doesn't come, as long as I don't understand the real nature of Atma, that it is Satyam, I will mistake these upadhis to be Satyam. And if these upadhis are taken to be Satyam, then I will think that Atma is really being altered by these, really being enclosed by these. Upadhi nasha is really upadhau satyatva buddhi nasha, and that happens only by seeing that Satyam is Atma alone. And all of these upadhis are reduced to mithya. When they are reduced to mithya, I see that Atma has always been one undivided, non-dual Atma. Coming and going of upadhis doesn't affect Atma at all. And when I say Atma, I'm really talking about the I. So I am this all-pervading consciousness that is only seemingly enclosed by these upadhis. They don't really enclose me at all. I am never affected by the coming and going of these upadhis. These different bodies and minds, they arise in me, they stay for some time, and they go away. In the next verse, Bhagavad talks about how these various attributes get transferred to Atma. Jnanopadhi vashadeva jati varnashramadayah atmani aropitaha voye rasavarnadi bhedavat. So when I give satyatvam to these upadhis and I take Atma to be enclosed in these upadhis, when I don't know who I really am, then I mistake myself. So I mistake myself to be the upadhi. I say, I am the body, I am the mind. And then I transfer the attributes of the body and mind onto myself. Jati, the gotra, one's lineage or one's race. I am Caucasian, I am Asian, I belong to the Bharadwaja Gotra. Varna, Brahmana, Kshatriya. Ashrama, Brahmachari, I am a Brahmachari, I am a Grihastha. I am white, I am black, I am brown. Color of the skin of the body. I am male, I am female, the gender of the body. All of these attributes become my attributes. Atmani aropitaha. They are superimposed on the Atma, which is I. Bhagavad-pada, like we saw the example, gives the example of Rasavarnadi Bhedavat Toye. Toya refers to water. So in water, if I mix turmeric, then I say this is a yellow, this water has become yellow. But really speaking, the turmeric hasn't altered the water in any way. Which is why subsequently using distillation, a process of distillation or filtration, I am able to get the water, unaltered water. The turmeric, salt, etc., they are all upadhis that transfer the color, that appear to transfer the color or the taste to the water, but they don't really alter the water at all. So similarly, Bhagavad-pada is making a point that Atma is not really altered at all. They are all aropitaha. They are all superimposed on the Atma. They don't really belong to the Atma. So Atma is never sullied by the body or the mind. So as we saw, the body and the mind are reduced to upadhis only once one understands the real nature of Atma. Then all of these upadhis become mithya. And mithya can never affect satyam, exactly like mirage water can never wet the sand. For an ajnani, the upadhis are a visheshanam. So the ajnani really suffers because of the changes that take place in the upadhis. Because he says, I am going through all these changes. But for a jnani, all of these upadhis are upadhis. Jnani clearly understands that no matter what changes these upadhis go through, I am untouched. Because I am Satyam, I am never really touched by Mithya. So with this, we will go on to the next verse, verse number 12. Panchīkrita Mahabhuta
पञ्चीकृत महाभूत
Sambhavam Karma Sanchitam
संभवं कर्म संचितम्
Śarīram Sukha Dukkhanam
शरीरं सुख दुःखानां
Bhogāyatanam
भोगायतनम् उच्यते.
So we did not really talk much about what is the nature of the upadhis. Here Bhagavad-pada is now zooming into the upadhi of the jiva. What are the upadhis of the jiva? Really speaking, there are multiple upadhis for the jiva. And as we saw in Atma Bodha, there are three upadhis: the Sthula Śarīram, the Sūkṣma Śarīram, and the Kāraṇa Śarīram. And each of these three upadhis have their different attributes. So for an ajnani jiva, all of these attributes become my attributes. And therefore, there is samsara as a result of the three upadhis, because of the transference of the attributes of the three upadhis. Well, each of them cause their own form of apurnatva. So here Bhagavad-pada is now talking about each of these three upadhis in the next three verses. So this verse talks about the sthula shariram, the first upadhi. The first upadhi in the enumeration. Really speaking, as when we see how these upadhis evolve, then they are really the last upadhi to get associated with. Because the Kāraṇa Śarīram and Sūkṣma Śarīram come first, and then the Sthula Śarīram comes. But in the enumeration here, Bhagavad-pada is talking about the Sthula Śarīra first. So as we saw in Tattva Bodha, we will analyze each of these three upadhis with these five criteria. Perceptibility, the materials that make up the upadhi, the function of the upadhi, what the constituents of the upadhi are, and what is the nature of the upadhi. So these 5 points. So the first is perceptibility of the sthula sharira. So here Bhagavad-pada says Panchīkrita Mahabhuta Sambhavam Karma Sanchita. So we see here, we'll notice a lot of similar sounding terms from what we had seen in Tattva Bodha. So there is remarkable consistency between what we saw in Tattva Bodha and Atma Bodha. For example, if we take the definition of the Sthula Sharira, Panchīkrita Panchamahabhutai Kritam Satkarma Janyam Sukha Dukkhadi Bhogayatanam Asti Jayate Vardhate Viparinamate Apakshiyate Vinashyati षड्विकारवत् Etat Sthula Shariram. So Panchīkrita Panchamahābhūtaihi Kritam, Tattva Bodha said. Here it said Panchīkrita Mahabhuta Sambhava. And Satkarma Janyam, here it says Karma Sanchitam. And Sukha Dukkhadi Bhogayatanam, it said, here it says Sukha Dukkhanam Bhogayatanam. So remarkable consistency, which is why there are a lot of people who think that Bhagavad-pada himself is a likely author of Tattva Bodha. So now coming to the perceptibility, we say that this is the Sthula Shariram, so it's made of the Sthula Pancha Mahabhutas. We talked about the projection of the world from Brahman in association with Maya. So from Ishvara basically. The first manifestation of from Ishvara, Brahman in association with Maya, are the Sūkṣma Panchabhutas. Sūkṣma Akashaha, Vayuhu, Agnihi, Jalam and Prithvi. So these Sūkṣma Panchabhutas are called Sūkṣma because they cannot be seen with our senses. Very, very subtle. Then they go through the process of Panchīkaranam. That's why it says Panchīkrita Mahabhuta. So we will recollect what we talked about Panchīkaranam during Tattva Bodha. So Panchīkaranam is the creation of this five-fold alloy, like we talk about an alloy of metals, a mixture of metals. Similarly, these Sūkṣma Panchabhutas become alloyed to create the Sthula Panchabhutas. Now, what is the composition of this alloy? If you look into it, let's take Akasha for example. The Sūkṣma Akasha. Let's imagine it's like a circle. The Sūkṣma Akasha. So it gets divided into half, and half the Akasha remains as it is in the alloy. There is no change. Now the other half of Akasha is divided into 4. So we have half Akasha plus 1/4 of half Akasha, four pieces of the second half of Akasha. So you have half Akasha plus 4 pieces of 1/8 Akasha basically. So half plus 4 into 1/8. makes one whole. So now what happens is, in the alloy, half akasha remains as it is. And these one-eighth akashas, they are removed and replaced with 1/8 Vayuhu, 1/8 Agnihi, 1/8 Jalam, and 1/8 Prithvi. So we have half of the original element plus 1/8 of each of the other 4 elements. So this is the Panchikrita Akasha. Similarly, Panchikrita Vayuhu, 1/2 Vayu plus 1/8 of each of the other 4 elements. Panchikrita Agni, Panchikrita Jalam, Panchikrita Prithvi. So these are the Sthula Panchabhutas. They come about through Panchikaranam. Therefore, Panchikrita Mahabhuta Sambhavam. So this Sthula Sharira is made of the Panchikrita Panchamahabhutas, grossified elements. And therefore they are visible to me. My Sthula Sharira is visible to me and also visible to you. My Sthula Sharira is visible to you also. So this is with regards to the perceptibility. Now what are the materials? It says Panchikrita Mahabhuta Sambhavam. Materials are the Panchikrita Pancha Mahabhutas. But then, if all the bodies are made of the same Sthula Pancha Mahabhutas, shouldn't they all look the same? Why are there differences? So Bhagavad adds, Karma Sanchitam. The karma of the Jiva is a contributing factor. Like all of these houses, they are made of bricks and cement, steel, glass, water, 5 elements go into making all these houses. But then each of these houses looks very different. Why does it look different? Because even though the materials are the same, the blueprint of the houses, as conceived by the architect, blueprints are different. So similarly here, the karma of the Jiva provides the blueprint for the Sthula Sharira. What kind of Sthula Sharira is this Jiva going to get associated with? The karma manufactures that kind of a Sthula Sharira for this Jiva. Which is why we see that for some people, even at the age of 80, for example, when Swamiji says they are able to eat all this chide that's made during Janmashtami, right? Which is very hard to bite. There is a person at 80 who is just eating these very comfortably. But then sitting beside him is his 55-year-old son, who is somewhat envious of his dad that he is able to eat all these cheeses, whereas he has all these dental problems and now is on the verge of getting dentures. So why are there such differences? Because of karma. Some bodies live very long, other bodies have a short life. Why? Again, because of karma. So karma sanchitam. And people here may say that, hey, the differences are really due to genetics. So there's some truth to that the differences are due to genetics. So for example, in this case, his father who is eating cheeses, but the son has got all these dental problems. His mother has all these dental problems, and that's why he inherited. But then the question is, why did this particular Jiva get those genes? Why did this Jiva get associated with a Sthula Shariram that has got those genetics? Again, we have to say it's because of the karma of the Jiva. So this is karma sanchitam. The Sthula Sharira is karma sanchitam. Then we come to the function of the Sthula Sharira. So Bhagavad here says Bhogayatanam, meaning that it's an abode for the Jiva, a tenement that the Jiva comes to occupy for some time. And it's not like the Jiva owns this. It is more comparable to a rented house, where one pays the rent and occupies that space. And what is the rent that is being paid here? The rent is karma. So the tenement that one gets, the abode that one occupies, that is based on what kind of rent one is able to pay. What kind of rent karma balance one has, that determines the type of abode that one is able to occupy. So this Sthula Sharira association is necessary for interaction with the world. Because in deep sleep, there is no association with the Sthula Sharira. We drop the identification with the Sthula Sharira. So there is no interaction with the world possible. And the purpose of the creation, as we saw, is the exhaustion of the karmas of the jivas. So the jivas remain in their Kāraṇa Sharira avastha. If they remain in this unmanifest form in Maya, then they cannot really have any experiences and cannot exhaust the punya papas. The jivas have to have this Sthula Shariram so that they can exhaust their punya papas. And only when associated with the Sthula Shariram, one can interact with the world and go through various experiences. Therefore, Bhoga Ayatanam, it is the abode where one undergoes various kinds of experiences. And what kind of experiences? Sukha Dukkhanam Bhogayatanam. One goes through Sukha and Dukkha. One interacts with the world, and the interaction with the world is what gives me Sukha and Dukkha. In deep sleep, in Kāraṇa avastha, there is no Sukha, no Dukkha. I believe we can say that there is a lot of Sukha in deep sleep. There is no Dukkha though, there is no samsara. But that Sukha is not because of interaction with the world. That Sukha is because of the reflection of Atmananda in the Kāraṇa Sharira, as we had seen. So the only way to exhaust the karma is to go through the Sukha and Dukkha, which happens only through interaction with the world. So every time one experiences Sukha, it is because of some punya that was fructifying, and with the experience of the Sukha, that punya gets exhausted. Similarly, if someone experiences dukkha because of interaction with the world, and that dukkha is also because of some papa that was fructifying. And with the experience of that dukkha, the papa is also exhausted. Therefore, we say that if one is undergoing dukkha in this world for some reason, because of interactions with the world, then one can take some solace in the fact that the papa is getting exhausted. And once this papa has to get exhausted, that's why this janma has been taken. And with the exhaustion of the papa, that papa is gone. It had to provide dukkha in some form or the other. It is providing dukkha in this form. If the dukkha did not come in this form, it would have come in some other form, that is guaranteed. So sukha dukkhanam bhogayatanam. And when the prarabdha karma that brought this body into existence, through all these experiences and interactions with the world, when that prarabdha is exhausted, the body drops. It's like the fuel, when the fuel for the rocket is exhausted, the rocket is propelled by the fuel. The fuel is exhausted, the rocket drops. That's the fuel of karma, is what keeps this body going. The prarabdha karma is exhausted, this body drops. This is the function of the Sthula Sharira. And what are its constituents? Constituents are well known to us because it's visible to the senses. We talk about the head, the neck, the torso, the hand, the limbs, hands, legs, etc. Those are the constituents of this body. The seat of the various sense organs of knowledge and the organs of action. Then what is the nature of this body? Bhagavad says, Śarīram. Śarīram. The word Śarīram itself means Rogadina Shiryamanatvat Śarīram. That which is destroyed, that which is subject to being destroyed because of disease, etc. Rogadina Shiryamanatvat Śarīram. And like we saw in Atma Bodha, Shadvikaravat etat sthula shariram asti. It exists in a very small form in the womb. Asti. Jayate. Once it reaches a certain maturity in the womb, it is born. Jayate. Vardhate. Once it has come out, it grows by consuming food. Viparinamate. At adolescence, it undergoes this metamorphosis, transformation. And it stays stable for some time, and then apakshiyate, begins to decay. And finally, when the prarabdha is exhausted, vinashyati. Shadvikaravat etat sthula shariram. So this is with regards to the sthula sharira. And the sthula sharira cannot be carried over to the next janma. Once it is dropped, it is dropped. The jiva continues to the next janma, but this sthula sharira is disposed of, either cremated or buried, whatever. Goes back to the sthula pancha mahabhutani from where it came. This is the sthula shariram. So now we come to the next shloka that talks about the Sūkṣma sharira. Pancha prana mano buddhi.
Pancha prana mano buddhi.
Dashendriya samanvitam.
Dashendriya samanvitam.
Apanchīkrita bhūtotham.
Apanchīkrita bhūtotham.
Sūkṣmāngam bhoga sadhanam.
Sūkṣmāngam bhoga sadhanam.
So perceptibility of the Sūkṣma Sharira. What is the perceptibility? It is Sūkṣmāngam. It is Sūkṣma. And therefore, my subtle body is visible, is experienceable only by me, not by you. And your Sūkṣma Sharira is experienceable only by you, not by me. But I intimately experience my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions. And what is going on in my mind, you are not able to experience, and vice versa. And in some ways it is good that this is there. Because like Swamiji gives this example of a person who visits somebody. So he rings the bell. So the host is curious who it is and goes and opens the door. And then he sees this person who is his some relative or acquaintance. And then he says smilingly, "Welcome, welcome." But then internally he's thinking, like, this person has come again now. And now another 1.5 years, 1.5 hours of my day is gone. Because once he starts to talk, he doesn't stop. So he invites him to sit, and then he's talking to him. And this person also doesn't get a clue that this host is uncomfortable. Since he has said welcome, he takes that literally and he continues to talk with a lot of gusto. And this person, the host, cannot even look at his watch, poor fellow. So he's nodding his head for everything the other person says. So what is going on in the host's Sūkṣma Śarīra, this person cannot see. But it is good in a way, because at least, sometimes you are deliberating about various kinds of options before taking a decision. And then it's good that all of your deliberations are not visible to everybody. Otherwise, people can mistake you completely. But in some cases, this is a problem. For example, when diplomats talk to each other, in the country, that diplomat from one country says something that we will help you on this occasion, but he has no plans to do so. This person can also get misled. So anyway, this is samsara. This is how it is. So Sūkṣma Śarīram, my Sūkṣma Śarīram is experienceable only by me, not by you, and vice versa. But even though I cannot experience your Sūkṣma Śarīram, I can infer its presence or absence. For example, I look at I cannot see electricity with my sense organs. With my eyes, I cannot see the presence of electricity. But when I see the fan rotating, I know that electricity is there. That's why it's rotating. But let's say the switch is on and the fan still doesn't rotate. Then I infer that the electricity is not there. So similarly, let us say that I go to somebody's house and I knock on the door. I knock a few times and then somebody answers from inside. Who is it? Somebody peeps out of the door. So this is the grihi, meaning the person who is occupying the griham. The house is there, and the grihi is there inside the house, the occupant of the house. So similarly, let's say somebody is sleeping. Then I call this person a few times, Ramu, get up, get up. And there is no response, so I sprinkle some water. And then he opens his eyes and asks, who is it? So this is the deha. And this person who responds is the dehi, the person who is occupying the tenement. But in some cases, you sprinkle the water, still no response. Then you call the doctor. The doctor comes and he checks the pulse and he opens the eyes and shines the torch to see if there is some response. Now, what is supposed to happen is when you shine this light, then the pupils should contract because there's too much light coming into the eyes. If the Sūkṣma Śarīram is there, the pupils will contract. If there is no response, doctor says he has departed. So science doesn't know what departed. But it's Vedanta that tells us that it's a Sūkṣma Śarīram, the Dehi has departed. Like somebody vacates the house, the Grihi vacates the house and goes and occupies a new house. That house has been vacated. Similarly, this house gets vacated. So it's a Sūkṣma Śarīram that departs. See, there's a lot of confusion that people say the Ātmā has departed. But Ātmā is all pervading. Ātmā cannot travel. Why? Because it's all pervading. It's everywhere. When it is everywhere, Ātmā has no way of traveling from one place to another. It was already there where you are talking about it traveling. So it's the Sūkṣma Śarīram that departs the body on death. Ātmā doesn't depart. This is the perceptibility of the Sūkṣma Śarīram. What is the material? Apanchīkrita bhūtotham. Apanchīkrita bhūtotham. Utham. Apanchīkrita bhūta utham. Bhuta and utham become bhūtotham. Utham means utpannam. So it is made of the subtle Panchabhutas, Apanchīkrita Panchamahabhutani. The very first manifestation of Ishvara are the Sūkṣma Panchabhutas. And right after the Sūkṣma Panchabhutas come, they configure themselves into the Sūkṣma Shariras of the various Jivas. So what is the speciality about the Sūkṣma Panchabhuta material? We say it is capable of reflecting the consciousness. Well, it's very, very fine material. Just like the mirror is made of very fine material, it is capable of reflecting light. Similarly, the Sūkṣma Panchabhutas are capable of reflecting consciousness. So the Sūkṣma Śarīram is also able to reflect the consciousness. It borrows consciousness from Ātmā and becomes sentient. So this is why there are sentient beings in the world and insentient beings like these pots. The pot is not sentient, but the human being is sentient. Because the human being has a Sūkṣma Sharira, the pot does not have a Sūkṣma Sharira. Even though Atma is there, Atma is enclosed in the pot also. Why? Because Atma is all-pervading. It helplessly is there in the pot also. In a manner of saying, just like we say space is in the pot. Similarly, Atma is there in the pot also, but that the pot doesn't become sentient, it doesn't start talking and walking around because Atma is there. Why? Because the Sūkṣma Sharira is not there. So the pot remains insentient. So this is the material of the Sūkṣma Shariram made of apanchīkrita bhūtotham. And what is the function of the Sūkṣma Sharira? We talked about the perceptibility, material, next is function. Bhagavad himself says here, bhoga sadhanam. It is the means by which all these experiences take place. Means by which all the interactions with the world take place, that result in various experiences. So how is it the means? Well, like we said, the Sthula Sharira has to first get life before it can experience the world. And how does the Sthula Sharira get life? Only because of the presence of the Sūkṣma Sharira. Sūkṣma Sharira has to get associated with the Sthula Sharira. If the Sūkṣma Sharira is not associated with the Sthula Sharira is as good as a pot. The Atma is there, Sūkṣma Sharira is not there, the Sthula Sharira is as good as a pot or a log of wood. So the Sūkṣma Sharira lends life, lends consciousness to the Sthula Sharira. That's the first job, first function of the Sūkṣma Sharira. That's how it can become a bhoga sadhanam, by giving life to the Sthula Sharira. And the second function is that it provides all the various tools for interaction with the world. Well, like we said, this Sthula Sharira is like a rented place. Sometimes these companies, they want to open a new office in a particular city. So the first thing they go is they look around for a place. And once they have found a building where they can occupy, then they need all these things like the phone connection, the internet connection, the phone, a computer, and email, etc. So all of these are the various tools that allow the occupant of the office to interact with the world. Similarly, the Sūkṣma Sharira provides the entire toolkit for interacting with the world. So it provides the instruments of knowledge through which I gain this knowledge about the state of the world. And it provides the instruments of action by which I respond to the world. This is the function of the Sūkṣma Sharira. And then come the constituents. What are the constituents of the Sūkṣma Sharira? So Bhagavad-pada himself says, Pancha prana mano buddhi dashendriya samanvitam. Samanvitam means consisting of or endowed with. Sūkṣma Śarīram consists of or is endowed with these things, Pancha prana mano buddhi dashendriya. So there are 17 components here. If you see, Dasha Indriya means 10 Indriyas. And Pancha Pranas, 5 Pranas. So 10 plus 5, 15. And Mano Buddhihi, 16, 17. That's why in Tattva Bodha we saw. Sūkṣma Śarīram kim apanchīkrita panchamaha bhūtaih kritam satkarmajanyam sukhadukkhadi bhoga sadhanam पंच ज्ञानेन्द्रियाणि पंच कर्मेन्द्रियाणि पंच प्राणादयः मनश्चैकं बुद्धिश्चैका एवं सप्तदश कलाभिः सह यत्तिष्ठति तत् सूक्ष्म शरीरम्. So सप्तदश कलाभिः, सप्तदश means 7 plus 10, सप्तदश कलाभिः 17. 17 components. So pancha pranas, pranaha, so 5 pranas consisting of pranaha, the respiratory function, apanaha, the evacuatory or excretory function, apanaha, vyanaha, the circulatory function, udanaha is this reversal, function of reversal that happens when one vomits or tries to get something out of the body through the upper apertures. And Udana also becomes active as we have seen at the time of death. It is like the packer and mover that takes the entire Sūkṣma Śarīra and packs it and drags it out of the Sthula Śarīra. Udana. And Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, and Samanaha, which is the digestive function, which takes the food that is taken in, converts it to energy, and then Vyanaha distributes it all over the body. So conversion of food to energy is done by Samanaha. These are the Pancha Pranas. And then Pancha Jnanendriyani. When Bhagavad-pada says Dashendriya, is combined the Pancha Jnanendriyas and Pancha Karmendriyas. So if we split that, Pancha Jnanendriyani, Shrotram, the organ of hearing, Tvak, the organ of touch, Chakshuhu, the organ of sight, Rasana, the organ of taste, and Ghranam, the organ of smell. And Pancha Karmendriyani, Vak, the organ of speech, Pani, the organ of grasping, Pada, the organ of locomotion, feet, Ayuhu, the excretory organ, and Upastha, the reproductive organs, the genitals. So really speaking, we are not talking about these organs as they are located in the Sthula Sharira. We are talking about Indriyam here, and Indriyam is Atindriyam, meaning that the Indriya cannot be seen by the Indriyas, because it's really a part of the Sūkṣma Sharira. So in the Sūkṣma Sharira, there are organs of sight, organ of touch, etc., which pervade the Sthula Sharira and get located in the appropriate locations in the Sthula Sharira. The organ of touch pervades the entire Sthula Sharira. So we are talking about the organs that are located in the Sūkṣma Sharira. We talked about Pancha Prana, Pancha Jnanendriyani, Pancha Karmendriyani, and Manas and Buddhi, Mano Buddhihi. The Sankalpa Vikalpatmakam Manaha. The Antakarana, or the inner organ, when it functions by asking questions, is it this or this? For example, when I see a flower, I ask, is it a real rose or is it a fake rose? I have determined it's a rose. That determination is the buddhi. But when there is doubt, sankalpa vikalpa atmaka, then is it a real rose or a fake rose? That's the manaha. But then I touch it and I see that, feel the unmistakable touch of a real rose. And I say, this is a real rose. And that's the buddhi, nischayatmika buddhi. So these are the constituents of the Sūkṣma Sharīra. And what is its nature? Nature of the Sūkṣma Sharīra. We say it's also changing. Sūkṣma Sharīra is changing because as it goes through the various experiences, the experiences create impressions in the mind called samskaras. So samskaras are created based on various experiences. So with every experience, that experience is getting registered in the mind in the form of samskaras. So the Sūkṣma Sharīra is also changing. But the Sūkṣma Sharīra has got a much longer life as compared to the Sthula Sharīra. Because Sthula Sharīra is born with the Janma and goes with the Mrityu. Janma to Mrityu. At most, the Sthula Sharīra lasts around 100 years, one can say. Because may you live 100 years. That is a blessing. So we can say around 100 years, but there are some people who live longer. For example, about a few years ago, there was a person from Varanasi, and he was a yoga teacher. And at that time itself, he was like 125 years or so, who got a Padma Shri a few years ago. So that's about the duration. We can talk about maximum duration of the Sthula Sharīra. The Sūkṣma Sharīra lives much, much longer. Even after the Sthula Sharīra goes, the Sūkṣma Sharīra travels to occupy another Sthula Sharīra. And it carries the samskaras from the prior lives. The Sūkṣma Sharīra that is here now has carried the samskaras from the prior life. Which is why we find all the prodigies. This is the only explanation for why there are prodigies. Children at the age of 3, 4, they start displaying remarkable talents, exceptional talents. The field of music, for example. Start playing musical instruments at a very young age. Or there are chess prodigies. There are even spiritual prodigies. Start to show exceptional spiritual inclination even at a very young age. We say because of the samskaras being carried forward from the prior janmas. This is why we say that even if one is old, it is not too late to study the Shastras, study Vedanta. Because there is always a possibility that one may get liberated in this life itself. We don't know. We don't know what kind of samskaras the Sūkṣma Sharīra has. But even otherwise, even if the job is not completed in this janma, if one has exposure to this teaching, the samskaras are being developed. These samskaras, if the job is not finished in this janma, will get carried forward to the next janma. This is the assurance that that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita. So the Sūkṣma Sharīra has a much longer life. And what is the lifetime of the Sūkṣma Sharīra? We say that it is created during Srishti. After these Sūkṣma Panchabhutas emerge from Ishvara, they configure themselves into the Sūkṣma Shariras or the various Jivas based on the karmas of the Jivas. And then the Sūkṣma Sharīra occupies one Sthula Sharīra after another that continues. Even in this Srishti, one Srishti, there are countless Sthula Shariras that this one Sūkṣma Sharīra occupies. And then when does this Sūkṣma Sharīra go? We say it goes during Pralaya, When the samashti prarabdha is exhausted, that brought the sishti into existence, when the samashti prarabdha is exhausted, at that time, all the sthula and sūkṣma shariras go back into the unmanifest condition during pralayam. So the Sūkṣma Sharira lasts from Srishti to Pralayam. So now we come to the last of the three Shariras, the Kāraṇa Sharira. Anadya Vidya Nirvachya
Anadya vidya nirvachya
Kāraṇopadhiruchyate
Kāraṇopadhiruchyate
Upadhitritayadanyam
Upadhi tritayad anyam
Ātmānam avadhārayet.
Ātmānam avadhārayet.
Kāraṇopadhihi uchyate. And Bhagavad Gita is talking about the Kāraṇa Sharira. Anadi avidya anirvachya. So we will take up the same criteria. Perceptibility, materials, function, constituents, and nature. What is the perceptibility of the Kāraṇa Sharira? We said, my Sthula Sharira is visible to me and visible to you. My Sūkṣma Sharira is only visible to me, not to you. My Kāraṇa Sharira is neither visible to me nor to you. Kāraṇa Sharira is always unmanifest, never becomes visible. Why is it not visible to me? Because the Sūkṣma Sharira is made of subtle materials, all right. But then the Kāraṇa Sharira is made of even subtler materials than the Sūkṣma Sharira. It's the most primordial material, on the same level as Maya. Maya is primordial material. The Kāraṇa Sharira is also this primordial, subtlest material, and that cannot be grasped by this subtle material that the Sūkṣma Sharira is made of. So for example, if I have to measure millimeters, right, to the extent of millimeters, some object that is of the order of millimeters, then I take this scale that has millimeter markings. So that can now measure this object. But now let us say I have to measure this thickness of this wire, which is much less than millimeters. It's in micrometers, let us say. Or the thickness of a sheet, that's in micrometers. And then the scale cannot measure that. The scale is too gross for that. Even though the scale has got subtle markings in millimeters, it is too gross for micrometers. So you need something like the micrometer screw gauge. I remember using some of these in our labs when we were studying, and that can measure micrometers. So this normal scale with millimeter markings cannot measure the micrometer thickness wire. So similarly, even though the Sūkṣma Sharira is Sūkṣma, it is still Sthula when compared to the Kāraṇa Sharira. Therefore, it cannot perceive the Kāraṇa Sharira. So this Kāraṇa Sharira, how is it known then? Only through the Shastra Pramana, through the Shabdas of Vedanta, we know it is there. No other way of perceiving it. This is with regards to the perceptibility. Then we come to the material of the Kāraṇa Sharira. We say Sthula Sharira is made of Sthula Panchabhutas. Sūkṣma Sharira is made of Sūkṣma Panchabhutas. What is the Kāraṇa Sharira made of? We should not say Kāraṇa Sharira is made of Kāraṇa Panchabhutas. Because at Kāraṇa level, we cannot even talk of Pancha. The distinction of Pancha also arises when the thing becomes manifest. When it's unmanifest, we cannot talk of Panchabhutas at the Kāraṇa level. We can only say it is made of some Kāraṇa material, causal material, primordial material. And that cannot be further classified at all. Because classification can be done only for something that has become manifest. So this is the material. And what is the function of the Kāraṇa Śarīram? So it's Kāraṇa Upadhi. Bhagavad says here, Kāraṇa Upadhi. And in Tattva Bodha we said, Śarīra dvayasya Kāraṇa matram. It is a Kāraṇa for the Sūkṣma and Sthula Śarīra. So as we saw at the time of Srishti, right? Beginning of Srishti, there is Maya. Maya is there. And this Kāraṇa Śarīram is resident in Maya. And from the Kāraṇa Śarīram, the Sūkṣma Śarīras of the various Jivas emerge. And the Sūkṣma Śarīras stay for the duration of the Srishti and get associated with multiple Sthula Śarīras. But then there is Pralayam again, at which point the Sthula and Sūkṣma Śarīras, they become unmanifest, meaning that they go back into the Kāraṇa Śarīra from which they came. That Pralayam, they go back into the Kāraṇa Śarīra. And then next Srishti, they again become manifest. Sthula and Sūkṣma Śarīra, and then Sthula Śarīra. And then next Pralayam, they again become unmanifest, go back to the Kāraṇa Śarīra. So basically, as long as the Kāraṇa Śarīra is there, the Sūkṣma and Sthula Śarīras keep emerging. Like we saw, as long as the roots of the tree are there, then green shoots keep emerging from that tree. Similarly, the Kāraṇa Śarīra is like the root of this Jiva tree. If you were to think of the Jiva like a tree, the Kāraṇa Śarīra is really the root, the seed from which everything emerges. As long as the Kāraṇa Śarīra is there, Srishti after Srishti, the Sūkṣma and Sthula Śarīras keep emerging for the Jiva. So in the journey of the Jiva is associated with countless Sthula Śarīras in one Srishti. But then across Srishtis, the Jiva is also associated with countless Sūkṣma Śarīras. But the Kāraṇa Śarīra is only one. In this entire journey of the Jiva, the Kāraṇa Śarīra is only one Kāraṇa Śarīra that survives Pralaya after Pralaya. The Jiva is the Jiva, if we were to talk about the most fundamental seed form of the Jiva, then that would be the Kāraṇa Śarīra. This is the function of the Kāraṇa Śarīra. It contains all the karmas of the Jiva. All the karmas are resident in the Kāraṇa Śarīra only. If we were to argue that karmas are resident in the Sūkṣma Śarīra, the Sūkṣma Śarīra goes during Pralayam. Then how will this Jiva get the results of the Punya Papa done in the prior Srishtis? The Sthula and Sūkṣma Śarīra are gone. So the only place where the karmas can reside are the Kāraṇa Śarīra of the Jiva. Then what are its constituents? We say that we cannot really talk about the constituents of the unmanifest Kāraṇa Śarīra. We cannot even perceive the Kāraṇa Śarīra. And how can we perceive the constituents of the Kāraṇa Śarīra to talk about? So we say the constituents cannot really be perceived. But we say that the entire Jiva is present in an unmanifest form in the Kāraṇa Śarīra with all of the karmas of the Jiva. This is the constituent of the Kāraṇa Śarīra. Then what is the nature? What is the nature of the Kāraṇa Śarīra? So Bhagavad here says, Anadi avidya anirvachya. Anadi avidya anirvachya. So Bhagavad gives the name avidya, which is another name for the Kāraṇa Śarīra. And it's also called Maya, Prakriti, etc. Because Kāraṇa Śarīra is present within Maya. So it's also called Maya, Prakriti, Avidya. All of these are different names for the Kāraṇa Śarīra. And it is Anadi, meaning beginningless. So the Sthula Sharira, like we saw, begins with the Janma, ends with Mrityu. The Sūkṣma Sharira begins with Srishti. But the Kāraṇa Sharira is Anadi, meaning that it never began. Why do we say it's Anadi? So the word Anadi means Utpatti Shunyatvam Anaditvam. Utpatti Shunyatvam Anaditvam. Meaning that it never was produced. The Sthula Sharira is produced, therefore it's not Anadi. It is Adi, with beginning. The Sūkṣma Sharira is also produced, so it has an Adi, it has a beginning. But the Kāraṇa Sharira is never produced. It is never an effect. Like the Sthula Sharira is an effect, the Sūkṣma Sharira is an effect. Therefore they are produced. The Kāraṇa Sharira is never an effect, it is always the cause. It doesn't have a cause. The Sthula Sharira, Sūkṣma Sharira have a cause, which is the Kāraṇa Sharira. The Kāraṇa Sharira itself does not have a cause. It is never an effect. Therefore, it is never produced, always there. So you and I, all of us, have always been there as our Kāraṇa Shariras, as our respective Kāraṇa Shariras. We never had a beginning. And we say, there is another reason why it does not have a beginning. Why? Because it's avidya, the nature of ignorance. And ignorance too, we say, never has a beginning. Because we can never trace the beginning of any ignorance of ours also. If ignorance had a beginning, then that would mean the knowledge was there prior to the ignorance. And if knowledge was there, then ignorance can never begin. Therefore, ignorance never has a beginning. Similarly, we say avidya. Because it is avidya, the Kāraṇa Sharira also never had a beginning. Does the Kāraṇa Sharira have an end? An important question. So the Sthula Sharira has an end. Like we said, Mrityuhu is the end. Sūkṣma Sharira is the end. Pralaya is the end. Does the Kāraṇa Sharira have an end? We say pralaya after pralaya, the Kāraṇa Sharira continues. It's very, very stubborn. It refuses to go away. Why? Because of the nature of ignorance. Ignorance doesn't go away by itself. It is one of the things that never goes away by itself. Everything else in the Srishti has date of birth and date of death, but ignorance doesn't. Ignorance goes only with knowledge. So the Kāraṇa Sharira also doesn't go away by itself. It just repeatedly stays there, very stubborn. Pralaya after pralaya it is there. When does it go away? It goes away only in the Janma, when the Jiva gains Atma Jnanam. Then the Ajnanam, the Avidya goes away. And during Videha Mukti, the Kāraṇa Sharira goes away. Videha Mukti, the Kāraṇa Sharira of the Jiva goes away. That is when the Jiva attains moksha. That is why we say, after this dawn of knowledge, after Videha Mukti, there is no subsequent Janma for that Jiva. Because the cause of it is gone, the Kāraṇa is gone. So there will be no more Sūkṣma and Sthula Shariras for that Jiva. Then Anirvachya. Anirvachya means it cannot be classified as Sat or Asat, existent or non-existent. Why? Because it is Mithya. The Kāraṇa Sharira is a part of Maya. Maya doesn't have its own existence. Maya is dependent upon Brahman for its existence. Maya is Mithya. Therefore, it cannot be said to be existent. It doesn't have its own existence. But it cannot be said to be non-existent also, because its effects are experienced. If the cause was non-existent, then there should not be any effects. The effects of it are experienced, therefore it is not non-existent also. Therefore, sad asadbhyam vilakshanam. Therefore, it is anirvachya. So then, Bhagavad Pada comes to the question, okay, we have discussed all the three upadhis. Then who am I? What am I? What Bhagavad Pada says. Upadhi tritayad anyam atmanam avadharayet. So upadhi tritayad anyam. So I am none of these three upadhis. So as long as I'm self-ignorant, as long as I don't know that I am Brahman, the adhishthanam of all of this, then that is followed by adhyasa, the mistake, and then the upadhis are taken to be me. So I say, I am the body, I am the mind. And then the attributes of the upadhis are taken to be mine. Therefore I say that I am tall, I am short. Attributes of the sthula sharira. Or I say I'm not seeing very well. When I say I don't see very well, I'm talking about the function of the Jnanendriya, which is a part of the Sūkṣma Śarīra. But I say I don't see well. I don't hear well. That's all attributes of the Sūkṣma Śarīra being superimposed on the Atma. Or I say I am not able to walk well. That's the attribute of the Sthula and Sūkṣma Śarīras. The Pada Karmendriya being superimposed on the Atma. Or I say I am hungry, I am thirsty, the attribute of the prana against Sūkṣma Śarīra superimposed on the Atma. Or I say I am unsure about this, attribute of the mind. I am emotional, attribute of the mind being superimposed on the Atma. Or I am the doer, I am the decision maker, I make decisions. That's the attribute of the buddhi being superimposed on the Atma. And then when I say I slept, and that is the Kāraṇa Śarīra, I am identifying with the Kāraṇa Śarīra. Because the Kāraṇa Śarīra, that is really the sleeper. Ātmā doesn't sleep at all. So there I have identified with the Kāraṇa Śarīra. I am inactive in sleep. I have identified with the Kāraṇa Śarīra, attribute of the Kāraṇa Śarīra. So all of these superimpositions are due to Atma Ajnanam, due to self-ignorance. Ajnanam leads to Adhyasa, and Adhyasa of Apurnata. All of these attributes, I am mortal, I am limited. They make me Apurnaha, and therefore that is what is the cause of samsara. So Upadhi Tritayad Anyam Atmanam Avadharayet. So see that this Atma, I am distinct from all of these three Upadhis. The only solution for samsara is to gain the knowledge of the Adhishthanam. Knowledge of the Adhishthanam, that I am the Atma, that is the Adhishthanam of the whole thing. And when I know the Atma, I know that I am Satyam. I alone exist. I am Advayam. There is no second thing other than me. And I am Asangaha, meaning everything else is reduced to Mithya. Therefore, nothing can affect me. I am unaffected by everything else. I am the Adhishthanam, that is Satyam, Advayam, and Asangaha. And a Jnani who knows this, who has known the Atma as Upadhi Tritayad Anyam Atmanam, Jnani who has known this is liberated. Om Purnamadaഃ Purnamidam Purnāt Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.